Every day in my clinic, I see the same paradox play out. We live in an age of limitless wellness, supplements, retreats, biohacking, you name it, and yet people arrive at my studio feeling more tense, more disconnected, and more exhausted than ever. The world has made wellness something to achieve when it was always meant to be something that we live and feel. Today, I'm joined by Ashleigh Guthrie, resident meditation teacher from my wellness clinic, One Aesthetic Studio, who first helped me to pioneer bringing spiritual healing within medical aesthetics. My studio blends science, health, and stillness, where evidence-based medicine meets meditation and Eastern practices, and where my patient's nervous system is just as important as their outer beauty. $6.3 trillion, that's the size of the global wellness economy in 2023. More than 6% of global GDP, and that is still climbing. So when an industry grows this quickly, the voices get louder and they get more confusing. So our hope is to bring wellness back to physiology, to gentle nervous system health, and to the art of living in your body, your context, and your life. And we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like, leave a review, or share this conversation with someone you love. Ashleigh, welcome to Ageless.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Do you know, so am I. Starting with wellness, it's such a huge word and it's such a big buzzword now. So when I looked at the definitions of wellness, I really love this. So it was back in 1948. The World Health Organization said that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease. So whilst wellness can be described in this very 21st century context, actually the World Health Organization, they started to speak about this in the 1940s. And now when I'm looking at it, it's come so far, and you specifically work on a lot of emotional well-being, and you bring in a spiritual aspect to that. What does it mean to you in terms of that emotional process of helping your clients and the people that you sit in circle with go back to themselves?
That's a really good question. So I think before I go into that, in regards to that wellness sphere, I think that there are a few main components that create a whole person, that brings somebody back to wholeness, that if you can feed into those, then you become really well-rounded in your life and your choices. And for me, that is your mental, your physical, your emotional, your relational, and your spiritual. So the main ones that I cover in my work are the relational, the emotional, and the spiritual. Because I feel that everybody has their own variations, especially with their bodies, and that's a very intuitive process for somebody to discover for themselves, as is everything else. It's the people that come with a different perspective on the way the world is. You know, they step outside of the box of conformity and of comfort, and they bring a fresh perspective and innocence, the innocence of how to remember, how to see the wonder in the world. And sometimes we lose connection to that part of ourselves. And I think the more people that can remember that part of who they are and integrate that into their life, the world will be a very exciting and happy place to be in. When we first met, you just were planning to open the studio, and you were undergoing your yoga teacher training, and you spent a lot of time in Ibiza and your home of Hawaii. What inspired you to create the studio and fuse the two between the clinic and the essence of what you wanted to bring through in the space?
The difficulties that I hear on a daily basis of the social and cultural pressures of how people need to feel like they need to fit in a visual perspective. So I wanted to create this just safe space that would allow this interplay of self-empowerment, of self-development, but deep self-acceptance at the same time. And it was a concept. And as you say, where does it start? Well, at the beginning, I grew up with a genuine sense of multiculturalism where everybody had their own identity, and they had a pride of their identity, be it from a different ethnic background. So in Hawaii, it's such a huge melting pot, as you know, and it's such a genuinely inclusive space. But there's also something that's deeply spiritual about where that all comes from, this acceptance, this genuine sense of embodiment, of belonging. And it often returns to the land. And there's something around a day-to-day living of what wellness really means and how people can feel comfortable within their own identities. And then as I went through into the more formal yoga training and the yogic practices, really exploring that. I think when you really go in deep into yogic practice, and I personally love a lot of the philosophical aspects of it, the real roots of it. Again, these are ancient cultural beliefs and practices that there was nothing telling people, this is a protocol or whatever. Yeah. So I think definitely the background, being exposed to beautiful environments, multiculturalism, wellness, loving the learnings of yogic practice and philosophy, it eventually gave me the confidence to open up the studio.
I remember that you received a lot of questioning from certain peers within your field, and it never swayed you. You always had your vision, your confidence and belief in what you were creating and wanted to bring to life in that space.
You often described it as it was quite underground to start with, some of the practices that we did. I mean, now it's commonplace for people to understand what a sound bath is, or, some of the sound work that you do and some of the practices. But back then, again, it was kind of considered a little bit woo, and definitely certainly within the medical aesthetics community. Now, I hear a lot of people, saying that this is very important. This is what they do. They incorporate spirituality and wellness and the mental health, but not necessarily with any background in it or any real passion for it.
I mean, when I went to Nepal to learn how to play Tibetan singing bowls, and it very much was a calling, and I followed that inner voice. I found a shaman in Nepal who taught me how to play the Tibetan singing bowls via his grandfather's teachings. When I wanted to learn Thai massage, I went to Thailand and studied at a temple where Buddha apparently meditated.
Wow.
And I brought those teachings back. And the same has been with things like my sound healing, bringing that back. And when you opened up the studio, it was very clear and open from you. It's like, this is your space to share this with the community. And it was wonderful. It was so wonderful because it became what felt like a playground almost for us both, with what you were learning from your travels and your yogic practices, and how we combined the two. And you infused your ethos really from the client and perspective within the clinic, and you brought that into the studio, and it became the dynamic and the dance between the inner and outer beauty. And I think that that's where we complemented each other so well.
You always held it. It's the absolute truest explanation of what a safe space is. Never performative, never commercial, ever. It was, okay, we're here to support you, and whatever came up. And of course, many of the driving factors to some of those collective workshops that we did were because of, on a daily basis, I was hearing the pain. an actual suffering of the pressures of beauty standards, of appearance ideals, of all genders, how it was impacting their relationships, their lives, their careers, their finances. How could they keep up with a constant moving target? And that moving target is something that can create a huge amount of pain. And usually when I ask my patients a little bit deeper, then there's usually has been some sort of comment that's been made. Somewhere in their past, it can be childhood, it can be teenage years, it could have been yesterday, but there's usually something that has made people feel unsafe. And I think going back into wellness, for me, a big part of wellness is feeling safe within our own body and within our own environment. And that feeling of safety is so crucial to the physiology of the balance of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic, where it's, okay, now's the time to thrive, now's the time to pursue and achieve and, really go at it, achieve your best. And I absolutely 100% am behind my patients all the way, and I celebrate them all the time on that. But then there has to be that balance, because if your body is permanently in that state, it's constantly on the go in terms of the adrenals and, the noradrenaline, the cortisol, etc., then we start to see that inflammatory process that happens. So, yeah, it was, again, bringing back what I was seeing on a daily basis, which was that very outer, superficial pressure to my patients, but bringing it back into the internal realm, their internal world. And many people hadn't necessarily really explored that.
I think the last few years have really helped awaken people to a change that was necessary. And I think back in 2018, when you were launching the studio and the things that I was currently at that point exploring, it was almost a preparation period, the way I see it, for what is currently taking place right now in terms of people's perception shift on life. And I think that everything that we are currently seeing externally, let's say on social media, it has transitioned. It's transitioned more into body-based nervous system regulation, somatic awareness, compared to where it was like 5-6 years ago. And I think that you can spot the trends that are taking place in terms of what people are starting to speak about more. So there's also more talk on relational communication and how the effects that can have on people's stress levels.
And we know that strong true relationships and connection can be vital to good health and so many markers of illness. And I agree with you. I think a movement towards that is what's needed. So having said that, if a move towards genuine connection, genuine community, and a collective consciousness is so crucial as an underlying movement and energy and reason, what do you think is dangerous at the moment in terms of the wellness world? Anything specific that you've come across?
Developing one's own self-trust, I think, is the most important practice that you could be in with yourself right now. And it's to tune in and check in with yourself, with your own inner compass, because especially if you're feeling lost, because you've got to know what your own best interests are and to really hone in on, where am I giving my power away here? Where am I giving my power away to a product? Where am I giving my power away to another person? where am I choosing to invest in myself and who with? There's an act of discernment there, because I think, and I've seen that you can be taken advantage of in certain aspects of the field of wellness, because it's become so commercialized.
Yes.
So it's less about me painting the portrayal of what you should be wary of, and it's more about bringing it back to check in, do your due diligence with yourself and ask yourself, why am I choosing to engage with this? Why am I choosing to invest in this? Is it for my highest good right now? Or is there something else that I need to maybe simplify in my life and just focus on that for the next 3 months? And for me, it's more about building sustainability and stability within one's own self.
I do this from a medical perspective all the time. It's that sustainable. Is it realistic? Is it practical? Going back to what you were saying before about how do people who are embarking on this and are seeking out experts, but in an industry, like I see with my own, where it's now just absolutely exploding and people are becoming experts overnight, and they haven't necessarily invested to the absolute extent of personal learning and studying. How can you guide people to know what's right for them?
Well, I think they guide themselves, because I believe that wherever you end up, whoever you end up exploring, it comes back to relational. And I think that, sometimes you have to work with somebody for 6 months to get the lesson. It's like, I see where I was handing my power over there.
You have to have an awareness to do that, though. That's the problem.
So self-awareness is where I would start.
Yeah.
Build on your self-awareness.
Do you have any key tips as to how we can get back into connecting with that intuition and start to develop how we trust it again when we're constantly surrounded by noise?
Play.
Play.
Play. Play. Play. Play with what it feels like to say no. No, thank you. Play with what it feels like to say yes, and notice how it lands in the body. So if you start to attune to your body more in this concept, if somebody asks, would you like a cup of tea? Notice, just see what appears in the body. And if it's a no that you want to say, that's what your no feels like. If it's a yes, where do you feel that? And keep following that and strengthening that. And that's one of the best pieces of wisdom that I've shared with the people that I work with, is to get really clear and in connection with your yes and your no, and fine tune it.
I think this is so crucial to what I believe is wellness. So if we can inherently define what our true yes is and what our true no is, then again, there's a consistency and a stability to the choices that then we can cultivate.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a heart-based feeling. So a physical feeling that sits within my chest. It feels like I have relaxed, that there's more air in my lungs. I can feel myself slow down slightly. And then I feel more connected with myself when it's a yes. And when it's a no, it feels tight. So I feel, say, my intercostal muscles and my chest muscles, I can feel like myself tighten. And often we start to tighten our shoulders and our trapezius muscle, whatever, and I feel that tightness. And we know, of course, the gut-brain connection in terms of intuition, there's so much more interest in this space now, scientifically, because, of course, there's many, many nerve endings and serotonin and different receptors that are sitting in our gut that are making us spark that yes or no. And many of us have learned to turn that off because of reasoning and because of external logic. So sometimes it goes to my gut, and that can be a yes. When it's a no, it feels like pain. It's in my gut, and it feels high in my solar plexus, so kind of deep under my rib cage, in my upper abdomen, and that feels like pain. And then sometimes it's in my head, where in the head, again, we switch on that left side of our brain, and it's the logic. The logic will kick in, and, we can't make that decision because this will be the outcome. And again, our environment is telling us that would be a foolish decision to make. But then there's this other side, and I think it links to what you describe as play in the head, when we can switch off from, what's our expectation, what's being expected of us, and what lights up my curiosity and that innocence that you started with. So, yeah, it tends to sit different places.
And how would you say that you incorporate this into your lifestyle? As an entrepreneur, you are worldwide known in the field that you are in. How do you incorporate play, for example, into your life that contributes to your well-being and wellness outside of work?
Great question, Ashleigh. It doesn't always necessarily come easily to me. I think that when I was younger, play was somewhat always incorporated with a degree of movement, some degree of music. There was always a degree of creativity with it. So that's my first response when you ask me that question, is I go back to childhood and how did I relate to that? And I think now in my life today, it still shows up like that. It shows up with movement, with music, life. What can I learn from them? And that, to me, I might not be able to do that, every day, but I absolutely treasure it when I can do those things. What about you?
Horse riding. So I've just found new different ways to actually take enjoyment from learning something new within a field of familiarity. And it just brings me so much joy. I think joy has been underrated in terms of what healing can look like. And
within wellness.
Exactly. I think it's really important that it is incorporated within the wholeness of oneself. Even finding the really simple joys in life, or taking a picture of something that reminds you of a friend and sending that to them and spreading that joy, because it's something that you share together and therefore offers that connection. And I don't know about you, but I think that is one of the main aspects that I am seeing within the wellness industry, that I think is an up and coming evolution of what healing can look like, where it's not about divulging into your trauma. I think that has a time and a place.
Absolutely.
And what I see now is that there are more collaborations taking place where conversations are shared, and so you learn from each other in that mirror dynamic versus looking externally of yourself. It then becomes a shared experience.
Joy and understanding what we find to be joyful, I think, is going to be really crucial going forward. And from a wellness perspective within this industry, there's going to be more focus on the prospective aspect of healing, the impact of happiness, how we can really understand the relationship of our body and our mind and our soul on a perspective level, rather than constantly going backwards or fixing something right now. Ashleigh, we haven't even talked about the things that you learned in Peru, your explorations of different natural medicines, etc. I have a quick question for you that you may pull in from all of these different aspects of learning. What's one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever received from a health or a nervous system healing perspective?
Someone once said to me, learn to sit in your shit. And what they meant by that was stop looking for the next thing, stop distracting yourself, and stop avoiding what really you need to be looking at. And it really stopped me in my tracks.
So force yourself to sit with what is showing up as pain, or?
Wouldn't necessarily say force, choose. Because it's an act of kindness. So we can blame every other factor outside of ourselves, why something isn't working, why we're not receiving something from someone. And we can avoid our own grief, let's say. For one, we can avoid what we're scared of, so we run away. We fight. The fight or flight is a way to avoid sitting in one's own shit.
What does ageless mean to you?
Ageless, to me, is more about pro-vitality. And how can we incorporate enlivening ourselves from the inside out? And how can our age, as it evolves, represent who we have become and who we are becoming throughout our life? And how our face, let's say, or our body represents the life we have lived and the wisdom that we've gained from our experience. I think that's what ageless means to me, because you can carry forward all the different aspects of oneself. Therefore, we are ageless because we are timeless.
Ashleigh, thank you so much for joining me today and these beautiful insights. I appreciate you. This conversation shows that many of us are asking deeper questions about how we want to live and feel in our own bodies as the world keeps moving faster around us. As we look to the future of wellness, I hope that instead of expensive trends and marketing, that science continues to amplify and lead with incredible ways for us to live healthier than ever before. Despite the trillion-dollar industry that wellness has become, it was never meant to have a barrier to entry. Some of the most effective tools are ancient and, most importantly, free. Research shows, for example, that an 8-week meditation program can produce moderate, measurable reductions in multiple forms of psychological stress, proof that small, consistent practices can shift our biology in profound ways. I've always believed that science and spirituality can coexist, and that spiritual alignment helps us to understand ourselves. We've been practicing this in my studio for many years now, and will continue to lead in this area in balancing inner and outer health and happiness. I've been increasingly concerned about the fashion of wellness. When we chase wellness optics, actual healing is lost. When it becomes a status symbol, it suggests privilege. Together, conversations like this help bring wellness back down from aspiration and return it to its rightful place as a daily practice of self-connection and care that's accessible to everyone. As the research shows, group peer support interventions like the safe spaces Ashleigh has hosted at One Aesthetic Studio, where people share, listen and support each other, produce small but meaningful improvements in well-being and personal recovery. If you found this conversation valuable, please subscribe, share it with someone you love, and let us know the questions that you want answered in future episodes. And as a thank you for being here, you can redeem an exclusive 15% discount on the One Dermafacial and complimentary skin consultation with my team in my clinic One Aesthetic Studio. Simply follow the link in the show notes and enter the code WELLNESS15 at checkout. Together, we are reframing what it means to live and age beautifully and well. I'm Dr. Jonquille Chantrey, and this has been Ageless.